nice to have that discount when you move to live to Spain and just doing this geo arbitrage, moving from high cost of living to low cost of living. That's the way to go.
It really is. We always talk about, if you move here from the US, for example, your savings just grew by 30% the day you walk across the border. And that's rather nice. Nice way for it to go.
Spain is known for its warm climate, stunning landscapes, and a lifestyle that feels like a permanent vacation. But is it the best retirement destination in Europe? To help us understand why Spain is such a popular choice for retirees and how to move here, I'm joined today by Alastair, an owner of Moving to Spain.
Hello, Alastair. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to have you and your expertise as we explore everything retirees need to know about moving to Spain. Could you maybe tell about yourself and how did you decide to helping people relocate to Spain?
Yeah, thanks so much for having us on the channel today. We really appreciate it. I'm originally from South Africa, lived in London and then in Australia, and about 10 years ago, Alice and I decided to take a year off and come and live in Spain just for a one-year sabbatical. And of course, like everyone does, we fell in love with Spain, decided to stay. We made every mistake you could make when we moved here. We hired a terrible lawyer. We messed up our residency. We got our tax wrong. We hired a terrible house with a bad landlord. We really did make of it. And so when we needed a job, we thought maybe we could help people avoid those mistakes that we made. And that was where Moving to Spain was built, was trying to say, how do we use the experience of ourselves and other people we know to make moving to Spain a whole lot easier? And that's where the company started.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. First of all, let's outline some key topics of today's video so that will help our viewers to navigate. We'll start by discussing visa options for retirees to move to Spain. Next, we'll look into healthcare, discuss how accessible it is. After that, we'll look into popular places for people to retire in Spain. And make sure to stay till the end of the video, as we'll uncover the juicy part. What are the key expenses retirees should budget for when living in Spain? So first of all, let's start with visa options. If you are a retiree and you choose Spain as your retirement destination, what are the legal ways to move here? Are there any visas?
About 95% of people retiring to Spain use what's called a non-lucrative visa. It's also called the Spanish retirement visa. It's a very popular visa and well known. Some people also used to use visa, also called an investment visa, where you could buy a property and get residency in Spain. But that program is actually finishing in July. So unless you've got a house lined up, ready to go, and you can buy it and complete that sale and get your application in the next few weeks, the golden visa is probably not an opportunity. So for the vast majority of retirees, the non-lucrative visa is going to be where you want to be.
So what about non-lucrative visa?
What the Spanish government is looking for is that you can live in Spain without needing financial assistance from the government. So you need to be able to look after yourself. What they're looking for is a minimum passive income visa, and it's based on a figure called IPREM, which is a figure the government uses for a number of things, and you need 4 times IPREM. So we expect a change in early 2025. So the figures I'm giving you now are based on 2024, but when IPREM changes, the requirements will change. So early 2025, we're expecting an increase of around 7 to 10%. But for 2024, you need, for a single applicant, you need to show passive income of 28,800 euros. And if you have a partner, you need to show an additional 7,200 euros. So for a couple, you need to show a combined 36,000 euros of income. And that income has to be passive. So you can't be working. It can be from a pension, from an annuity. It can be from investment income. It also can be from things like royalties. So if you've written a hit song or you've got a book, those are not considered work. So those ongoing royalties are applicable. To demonstrate that, what you'll need to show is official documentation. So that could be a bank statement, investment account statement, a rental contract agreement for your investment property. Some of those will have to be translated into Spanish, but again, a good immigration lawyer should be able to step you through that.
Okay, so even if somebody doesn't have a passive income, but for example, they sell a house and they have savings on their bank accounts, they still can get this visa?
Yeah, you can get the visa. Again, what you're trying to demonstrate is that you can look after yourself. So how you create your application is really important. If you've got a solid passive income stream, then it's really easy. If you are using savings, you just need to be careful that the picture that the immigration department gets is that you can comfortably look after yourself in Spain.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how do you apply for this non-lucrative visa? Do you apply while being in your country, or you can apply directly in Spain?
This is one of the things that you need to get right. You cannot apply for the non-lucrative visa in Spain. So if you're here on a tourist visa or something like that, or a work visa, you have to go back to your country of origin to apply for a non-lucrative visa. And you have to apply in the nearest consulate to where you're resident. So each consulate treats things slightly differently. They have slightly different processes. But if you live in, for example, Alabama, you would have to go to Miami. That's the closest consulate. If you lived in San Francisco, you'd have to go to Los Angeles. So there are these consulates, and we've got some documentation around where to apply. But you need to understand that getting an appointment at a consulate the process might be slightly different, how they like the documents presented. And again, you really need to do that research so your application gets approved first time. And some of that information's online. You can find it in forums and stuff like that. But a good immigration lawyer, again, should be able to make sure that you get your application approved first time.
Okay. And what is the renewal process for this non-lucrative visa? How long can retirees stay under this visa in Spain?
So there's two bits to this, and the terms visa and residence permit get confused a bit and used sort of interchangeably. So your visa is your permission to enter the country. So your non-lucrative visa, once it's issued by the consulate, you go and pick up your passport. You have 90 days to enter Spain. So basically 3 months to arrive in Spain. And then once you're in Spain, you apply for your non-lucrative residence permit, which will be for 1 year. And then you can renew that residence permit in 2-year intervals. So after your first year of residence and two-year renewals, you will have been here for 5 years. And at that point, you can apply for permanent residency in Spain, which is a 5-year renewable residency status. And that status also allows you to work, it's easier to access healthcare in Spain. There's a whole lot of different things that come around permanent residency, which you can apply for after 5 years. But you do have to stay on your non-lucrative permit for that 5 years to qualify for that.
Yeah, and what about taxes? Very important question. Are there any taxes involved with this visa at all? How does that work?
There are. So basically, on a non-lucrative visa, you're not allowed to work here. So you shouldn't be earning any income in Spain from active work, but you might be earning income from your pensions. You might be earning investments or all sorts of income sources. Once you're living in Spain, generally for more than 183 days in a Spanish tax year, which is January to December. So when you are living here for more than 6 months in a year, you'll become tax resident in Spain. And once you're tax resident in Spain, you have to declare all your global income in Spain for Spanish taxation. So it sounds super complicated. It's actually not as difficult as it looks if you get the right help and somebody who understands expat taxes. So that's your income. You also have a tax called wealth tax in Spain, and this is a really important one to understand for retirees. So Spain raised this wealth tax as a temporary measure. It's stayed for quite a long time now, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere soon. You are taxed on your global assets. So this is non-income. So if you own a house, you've got savings, you've got a nice boat, a big car. All of those things can fall under your assets. There are each region in Spain, and if you think of there are 13 regions in Spain, and they're very similar to the states in the US in that the tax regimes here are different. So if you're in Catalonia, where Barcelona is, you would pay wealth tax on assets above 700,000 euros, plus you get some other deductions. If you were in Madrid or Andalusia, you'd pay zero wealth tax in those autonomous regions because they give 100% rebate on their wealth tax. So understanding the different tax rates of the different regions and how those are applied and how they will impact you is really, really important for retirees coming to Spain. So if you had, $15 million worth of assets globally, you might think really long and hard about how much you wanted to live in Barcelona because the tax burden on that would be much higher than if you lived in Andalusia, for example.
Moving to Spain collaborates with a professional team of immigration lawyers who help with different types of visa, including non-lucrative visa. Here is a QR code to check them out, and I will also leave a link to their services with a 10% discount from me in the description below this video.
Now we'll be discussing healthcare, also very important topic, especially for Americans moving from the US. What are the main differences between private health insurance and public healthcare in Spain? And what should retirees choose?
So Spain has a public healthcare system which is covered, the costs of which are covered by taxpayers in Spain. It's one of the best healthcare systems in the world. I read a study recently that it was the second most effective health outcomes per dollar spent in the world after Iceland. So it's an exceptional system. Unfortunately, you have to be either a Spanish citizen or paying tax in Spain effectively, so working in Spain to be able to access public healthcare. So for the vast majority of expat retirees, whether from the US or the UK or Australia or anywhere, you generally will not be able to access public healthcare. So that's the bad news. The good news is that private healthcare in Spain is exceptional. The private healthcare in Spain is the best that we've experienced anywhere in the world. It also is vastly cheaper than healthcare that you might access in the US, especially compared to the US.
That's very interesting. Could you break down approximately what's the cost of private insurance for retirees? Because I assume that varies by age, or like if a person has pre-existing conditions, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And age is the biggest determinant cost of cover. So depending on your age is going to be what your cover costs. Now, when we give quotes to Americans, one thing we have to clarify is that the costs we are giving are annual costs, because people come back to us often and say, is that for a month? No, these are the actual costs that you would pay for 12 months of cover. So I've got some quotes that we sent out in the last couple of weeks. So these are literally from November 2024. And I'll give you some standard cover, which covers visits to the doctor, visits to specialists, hospital cover. It doesn't include dental cover outside of standard checkups, but it does cover costs like physiotherapy, annual health tests, and all of that sort of thing. So for a single retiree age 75, standard cover for a year was 2,910 euros for a year. A couple age 64 and 63, standard cover was 2,636 euros. For a family of 5, it was a 47-year-old, a 45-year-old, 16, 14, and 9. For their family, for standard cover for a year, was 2,652 euros. And then I got one premium cover quote. Premium cover covers pretty much everything you can think of. Top care dental, a load of preventative medical testing, top hospital cover, unlimited operations, all of those sort of things. And for a couple 64 and 63, premium cover was 3,800 euros for the year.
Okay, so to clarify here, because I'm trying to understand, So basically, that gives approximately 250 euros monthly that you pay for this private insurance cover. And does it mean that everything is included except of dental care? So there are no co-payments. You just go to see a specialist, and that's it. You don't have to. There are no bills coming to your apartment. Let's ask it like that.
There are no bills coming to your apartment. So basically, when you apply for a non-lucrative visa, on most visas in Spain, you have to have private health insurance. It's part of the application process. You have to show that you have cover for the duration of the visa. And they're very specific about what sort of cover qualifies. So things that are excluded are prescription medication and dental is mostly not covered. In standard cover, in premium covers, it generally is. There's rebates on prescriptions and all of those sorts of things. But prescription medicine here is also, the cost of prescription medicine in Spain is a fraction of what it costs in the US. There's much tighter control about profiteering. There's a much more standardized list of medication, and there's a much better use of out-of-patent generic medication.
So if a person is in their 70s with pre-existing conditions, is it doable to find a private insurance in Spain?
Yeah, it is. It's harder, there's no doubt about it. And it does depend on what those pre-existing conditions are. So basically, if you've got a really serious pre-existing condition, it can be very difficult to find cover. We do have some options of insurers that we work with, but just we understand that the more severe the pre-existing condition, the harder it is to get cover and the more expensive that cover will be. So, you know, if your pre-existing condition is minor, you know, my glaucoma is a good example. I've got glaucoma, it's manageable with cheap drugs. That, including that pre-existing condition on my insurance, doesn't cost me any more money. So that's covered. If you had something like an active cancer or you know, Alzheimer's or something like that, then cover becomes much harder to get. So it's, you know, when we'll talk a bit later about how to plan your move, making sure you can get affordable cover that meets the immigration standards is one of the first things we recommend, because it can be a problem. There are ways sometimes around it. Speak to the right people in the right way and make sure, you know, we work with a number of different insurers, and, you know, you might be rejected in one, but accepted in another. Their medical teams are a little closed door in how they communicate with us, but we're, you know, working with a good broker or a good company, you can often work through these options.
So if you're considering moving to Spain but don't know where to start, the Moving to Spain agency will make your transition smooth and stress-free. They offer tailored planning packages to support every step of your move, from visa applications to explaining taxes and finding a right healthcare plan. Use my link in the description below with a 10% discount code on their services and get started on your dream life in Spain.
Okay, so moving on, popular retirement locations. I know few, but I'm really curious to hear your experience. What places did your clients often choose as a retirement destination?
So we did a piece of research on Spanish retirement hotspots, which is published on the website, and we broke down a whole lot of questions around what makes a great place to retire in Spain. One of the things we looked at was where we generate healthcare quotes. So when people come onto our website, they can request healthcare quotes, and they need in which province they're interested in moving to, because that makes a difference to the healthcare quote. So the top in order, Valencia was our most popular, followed by Alicante, Malaga, Barcelona, and fifth was Murcia. In our retirement hotspots, where we looked at a whole range of attributes, including the percentage of expat retirees who moved there, the percentage of people living there who were retired, both Spanish and expat, healthcare, cost of living, a whole bunch of things. And our top three were the towns of Almuneja in Granada, Neja in Malaga, and Torrevieja in Alicante. So those are our top three places. And again, you hear Barcelona and Madrid you hear most often because they are just the biggest cities. So more people tend to come here. But we're hearing also more and more people exploring less well-known parts of Spain. The Atlantic coast, sort of, between Portugal and France, is a very different part of Spain. It's much cooler, it's very green, it rains a lot. It's on the Atlantic Ocean, so it's got a much fresher feel to it. And those places like Galicia and A Coruña and those places are certainly starting to appear on people's radar a bit more. Very different to if you're living on the Mediterranean coast or inland, where it's obviously much hotter and drier than those beautiful, beautiful places.
This is very interesting. So you also mentioned smaller cities. What are the benefits of retiring in smaller towns or rural areas in Spain compared to larger cities like you mentioned, Barcelona, Valencia, Madrid?
Yeah, look, I think there's some real advantages, and people are exploring these more and more. The first one is the easiest, is it just costs a whole lot less. So your cost of living in a smaller town, you can get a bigger house, might get a nice garden, you could get a beautiful apartment for a fraction of the cost of what it would cost you in the major city in that region. Spain's got an amazing walking culture. People tend to walk everywhere. So even in big cities like Barcelona, Madrid, you walk a lot, public transport's around. But if you're in those small towns, they've got a beautiful sense of community. People will walk to the market. They'll sit in the square and have a coffee in the morning. You'll get to know the butcher and the baker. You're less likely to shop in a supermarket and more likely to shop in the local stores. So I think those small Spanish towns and rural areas have a wonderful sense of community. They're very welcoming of people. If you're in a big city like Barcelona, you can get a bit lost in there. Finding your way can be a bit, finding your community, finding your people can be a bit more difficult, especially for retirees. Where the smaller towns, pace of life's a bit lower, cost of living is a bit lower, people are friendly. All people all over Spain are friendly, but the small towns are especially friendly. Spain doesn't have an incredibly high foreign language ability. So most Spanish people speak Spanish. They'll speak a local language or dialect. Like, for example, in Catalonia, people speak Catalan. They'll often speak one other European language, like French or German. But English language capability in Spain is really low compared to, for example, Portugal or Netherlands or those sorts of countries. So, and that's very prevalent in smaller towns. So you might have a little bit of hassle finding an English doctor in your town. You might have to drive across to a slightly larger town around. But these are decisions you make as to what's super important to you. And learning some Spanish is really, I think, is important.
So the last thing I will talk about is cost of living. Can you break down the average monthly expenses for a retiree in Spain, including housing, utilities, food, and transportation?
Yeah, we can break it down a bit. It's really hard to do because your cost of living very much depends on how you live and where you live. So I'll give you some examples. If we were looking, we did a big study on the cost of living in Spain, an article on the website. We've also built a cost of living calculator. So you can go in and you can say, I want to live in this city, and you can adjust how much you eat out 3 times a week in nice restaurants. I want to have a cleaner come every day, and it will give you a really itemized cost of living, and you can have a look at that. Some of the figures we pulled out of that. So for an average rental of a 2-bedroom apartment of about 90 square meters, in Barcelona would cost you around 1,600 a month. In Valencia, that would cost you about 1,000 a month. And if you were somewhere like Extremadura, that would drop way down to about 500 a month. We looked at cost of, for example, a cleaner to come in and work in your house. That would be around 11 to 12 euros per hour. And that is fairly consistent around Spain. But again, cheaper areas, cheaper, more expensive areas will be more expensive. Things like eating out, you can have a meal out for lunchtime in a menu del dia in a nice little restaurant for 15 euros, and that'll be 3 courses with a glass of wine and a cup of coffee. You can spend 500 euros on a dinner in Barcelona if you choose to. If you're looking in general, what we looked at was that there's some things that are really much, much cheaper than they would be in other Western European countries, much cheaper than in the UK and much cheaper than in the US. Things like it, and it's the big ticket items. Your housing will be a fraction of the equivalent cost. Food, both eating in and groceries, fresh fruit and vegetables are a fraction of the cost of what they would be. The quality of the food here for the price that you spend is exceptional. The fresh produce from the markets or from the supermarkets is amazing. A lot of it grown in Spain. Healthcare, as we looked at, is a fraction of the cost. And public transport is incredibly good and incredibly cheap here. There are some things that are going to be a bit of a shock. So petrol here is around 150 a litre for 95 unleaded, and that obviously varies. Petrol is incredibly expensive. The other 2 big ticket items that people tend to notice when they come here are more expensive. Labeled clothing. So if you're buying a pair of Levi jeans or a polo shirt or something like that, you'll notice that those items are more expensive than in other countries sometimes. Spanish made, Spanish branded clothing like Esprit or those sorts of marks, not so much. And electronic items can be quite expensive comparative. So if you're buying a new laptop or washing machine, that could be more expensive than you're used to in some of the other countries.
Do you know how does Spain's cost of living compare to other European countries for retirees who have fixed income?
We did a study where we compared, trying to get as like for like as possible. So again, if you're in your tax brackets are going to make a difference, how you live is going to make a difference. We compared pretty much like for like. Spain comes in at about a 25% discount versus the similar cost of living in the UK, France, and Germany. And if you compare it to the US, it's more than 30% cheaper, around 32, 33% cheaper than your cost of living in the USA.
Nice to have that discount when you move to live to Spain, and just doing this geo arbitrage, moving from high cost of living to low cost of living. That's the way to go.
It really is. We always talk about, if you move here from the US, for example, your savings just grew by 30% the day you walk across the border. And that's rather nice. A nice way for it to go.
Thank you, Alastair. In conclusion, what would be your top advice for retirees planning to move to Spain?
Yeah, look, the 3 main things we speak to people about is the earlier you can start your planning, the better. Once you've decided that Spain's on the list, really start to put together a plan and figure out what are the services you need, what help are you going to need, what are the pathways you're going to take. And the second thing is, in that planning, identify your visa and your health insurance. 90% of people who want to move to Spain and then can't fall over on those 2 things: qualifying for a visa and qualifying for health insurance. So really early in the process, we say to people, speak to the right people, find out, make sure you can get your visa and make sure you can get your health insurance. Because if you've set your heart and soul on moving over here, and then you find out you can't because of one of those 2 reasons, there is no way around it. If you can't get a visa, you can't move to Spain. If you can't get health insurance, you can't get a visa, you can't move to Spain. And there is just no flexibility around that. So sort those 2 things out. And the final thing we talk to people a lot about is, when you're doing your research on where you live, really think about it quite carefully, because there's a lot of variables that go into living somewhere. It's not like visiting for a 2-week holiday. So I know towns not far from where we live on the coast that in summer are amazing. There's, beach bars and beautiful restaurants, and there's great, the taxis run all night. And in winter, everything shuts down. There is nothing there. So, all the restaurants close, the bars close, and that might be fine for people, but just really understand what is it like to live there all year round, because Spain really does have 4 seasons. Summer is long, spring and autumn are really long, but there is a winter, especially where, up north and on the northern coast. So really understand what's it like all year round. How does that impact amenities and activities? What's the weather like? How does it impact transport? And then really understand what healthcare is like where you want to move to, because it does vary by area. And the best way to do this is speak to people who've already done it. Facebook groups, Reddit groups, experts in these things. Try and find people who actually have lived experience, because everybody's got an opinion. Not all opinions are great. Finding somebody who's actually lived in an area can give you a real understanding of what it will be like for you.
Wow, Alastair, thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge. I think it was very valuable information for anybody who plans on retiring in Spain. If you have any questions, just leave a comment below this video, and don't forget to check out resources and tools on Moving to Spain website. Thank you so much again, Alastair, and I hope I'll see you soon.
All right, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and I hope this was useful to you and your viewers. If you have any other questions or any other topics you'd like to discuss, we'd be delighted to chat to you anytime. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much. Bye.